with just a few weeks left in his presidency, he's gone out with a bang. And last week alone, he's put an indefinite ban on oil drilling in large portions of the Atlantic and Arctic Oceans, granted another 78 pardons and 153 commutations, the most ever on a single day, bringing his overall clemency total to more than 1,300 people. And he plans to transfer 22 of the 59 remaining prisoners at Guantanamo Bay, leaving as few people there as is possible. Beyond those moves, Obama's main political victories over his tenure, obviously, Affordable Care Act, Paris Climate Agreement, restoration of diplomatic ties with Cuba, on and on. That was this year. In his final year, Dan, what stands out most? Not the whole 8-year thing. What stands out most to you from Barack Obama?
You know, a lot of people don't talk a lot about what happened with the economy, and I know you can look at it and say, well, they're market forces, or there's a cycle and things are bad and they get better, so Obama can't take any credit for that. But having been there through sort of the depths of the crash and to see what transpired and how they were scrambling to fix it, and were all of the fixes correct? No. But when I look at the Obama White House, that's what I see. I see they came into office at a time when, as he pointed out, the economy was on the cliff, ready to go over that cliff. And now we see it's not perfect, but, people have jobs and things are moving.
Unemployment also in the 4% range, right, which Mitt Romney predicted only he could pull off, if you
exactly.
remember.
And so that's sort of what stands out to me as sort of the big miracle of this administration.
What stands out for you from 2016, Judge
Well,
Gergen?
I mean, it's interesting, the rap on Obama, which was that he was very partisan and, got through Affordable Care only with Democrats.
That's true.
But
he didn't get any Republican votes.
But the first 6 months he was in, he was talking about being post-partisan. Right. And Mitch McConnell was the one who said, our only goal here is to make him a one-term president.
That was 2010. That was in the midterm.
But the notion would be that all of a sudden he was facing absolute intransigence. And so he did what he could. And I think that actually if you look at who he is as a person, he would have wanted to be bipartisan in all that he did.
Well, I will point out, though, that's one of the things, and I asked him several times why he didn't do more, like inviting Republicans over to the White House on a regular basis. Knowing that when you're going in, they're going to try to get you out, like that's the mission, then maybe you need to sort of blunt that by saying, okay, I'm going to be overly nice.
Remember the great line of the White House press correspondence dinner? He said, people say to me, why don't you have a drink with Mitch McConnell? He says, why don't you have a drink with Mitch McConnell?
I mean, there's so much. He always talked about, I'm going to go to Washington and change the way that things work there. But really, he didn't. He didn't go the extra mile. And once he got in there, and I think there are a lot of things that he could have done to blunt some of the criticism and some of the reaction from Republicans.
Speaking of reaction, a lot of people believe, a significant number of people believe that Donald Trump's election was not just about Hillary Clinton and him, but was about a reaction to Barack Obama. The term whitewash was used by Van Jones, who used to work for Barack Obama, meaning a changing country, a white lash against a black president. Do you think we saw some of that on November 8th?
I don't think so at all. I think, clearly it was a rejection of Barack Obama, but not as a result of the color of his skin, but in terms of his service as President of the United States over the last 8 years.
What in particular do you think people were rejecting if it wasn't in part race?
Well, I think, quite candidly, it was a great disappointment. I think even people that didn't support Barack Obama during his first election were hopeful that he would have been able to better unite the country. I think we're a more divided country today than we were 8 years ago. And I think the president has to take some responsibility for that. When you talk about 2016, I think the thing that stands out to me in 2016 is Barack Obama's inability to essentially have a Democrat win the White House.
You're shaking your head negatively, but I should say the one thing that, well, not only one, but that Michael Sullivan says totally true, fewer blacks in this country after 8 years of Barack Obama are hopeful about there being equality in this country than before he took office. Some of that's got to be visited on Barack Obama's doorstep, doesn't it?
I mean, I remember there was a scene of Barack Obama in a school in Washington reading to children. This was within the first 6 months of his being president. And the riff from I think it was McConnell, one of the Republicans, said that he's sending out propaganda to these kids. Right. It was like he was never legitimate from the moment he got in, putting aside the birther stuff.
Sort of like what Democrats are trying to do to Donald Trump,
well,
right, in 2016?
There's actually complicated responses to what they're going to do. Are they going to be as obstructionist as the Republicans were with respect to everything? Or are they going to say, well, climate change, we should at least pick and choose some things. In addition, this was an election in which the Russians interfered. It's not the birther movement. These are a false equivalency. Jim.
Speaking of the Russians and Barack Obama's last year, when you heard him say at the his final press event the other day, I sat down with Vladimir Putin and said, cut it out. What was your reaction to that?
I chuckled when I heard that. I mean, is that really what you stop it? Behave yourself. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know if that was legitimate. I mean, having been around that White House for quite some time, cut it out didn't seem like the kind of thing that Barack Obama would have said. It would have been a different kind of tone. So it almost sounded as if, I don't know, I couldn't really get to the bottom of it. I chuckled.
Okay,
really.
So it's Nostradamus time on Barack Obama now. If you get on the list of the major accomplishments of this president, the Iran deal, climate accord, Cuba, the Affordable Care Act, Donald Trump has said that he's against virtually every single one of them. With a few, how much of this survives the first year or two of Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, they're talking about the Affordable Care Act.
Or any of it.
Affordable Care Act, but they're talking about doing it in a very dangerous way. They're talking about changing that, but many years going forward, so that the impact will not be known in the subsequent elections. I don't think they can walk back from the Iran deal, because all that will happen is the other countries that have signed on to it will then be participants in it. Climate change, there's an interesting question about even among the billionaires in his cabinet.
Secretary of Defense supports the
That's
Paris
right. I mean,
Accord.
in other words, the question is whether the market has already shifted, taking into account climate change and the reaction to that, and whether there's much he can do. So what I worry about is that he will tell people that he's doing X when he is not.
Right. Well, isn't it the Democrats' job then to explain what they believe the truth to be, as opposed to the fake news, or the media's job? So your candidate, if you got on the list, I did the other day, top 10 achievements of Barack Obama, every single one Donald Trump has railed against. Does he take on all these things, or was this just campaign stuff?
Probably not. I think he'll address those things that he believes will have the greatest potential impact in a positive way to the American people, starting with the Affordable Care Act and also starting with immigration. Those are the two things I think that help drive him, to the White House. So he has to have successes, and the Republican administration needs successes in the first 2 years.
Well, they control everything. The good news is they control everything. The bad news, they have no excuses anymore.
Well, they have 2 years to essentially show
What's
successes.
your sense of what it survives and what doesn't?
I think a lot of it does survive. I think there are changes that happen around the edges, but these are not the kinds of things that you can just blow up overnight. One thing I will point out, though, is that a lot of candidates promise big things and use some of those promises to get into the White House. And then when they get there, there are forces beyond anyone's control that happen, unexpected things that happen that suddenly shift the ground underneath whatever platform or agenda that administration had. And so I don't know that we can sit here and say, well, this is what he's going to do with this, because 6 months from now, there could be something that we did not expect that he has to deal with, and has very little time to address some of these other issues.